I couldn't sleep that night. I was 5 months pregnant, and my body felt heavy, the weight of it pressing down on me like a stone I couldn't shake off. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the ceiling fan spinning lazily above our bed. I could feel the weight of the stillness. Everything seemed so calm on the outside, but something inside me was stirring, uneasy. Max had slipped out of bed quietly again. He'd done it a few times recently. Told me it was just work, but I knew it wasn't. Not really. It had been going on for weeks, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. His phone would light up in the middle of the night, and I'd hear him, whispering behind the bathroom door. I'd pretend to be asleep, but I wasn't. I couldn't be. The truth was, I'd never really belonged in his world. I came from a small town, a family who scraped by, working long hours just to keep the lights on. I used to think I was doing something right, even if it was just getting through the day. But then I met Max. I never expected to fall for someone like him, someone with a family name that carried weight, a world where people had buildings named after them, and homes with more bathrooms than I had ever seen in my entire life. Max never made me feel out of place at first. But slowly, as we got closer, I started to see the difference in the way his family looked at me. His mother, Claire, especially. I could tell she didn't approve of me. She'd look at me with that polite smile of hers. But there was always something behind her eyes, a certain judgment that stung. The things I said, the way I dressed, my background. Nothing seemed to meet her standards. And that weight I carried in my chest grew heavier with every passing day. I tried to push those thoughts away, telling myself that it didn't matter, that it shouldn't matter. But deep down I couldn't help it. I wasn't just marrying Max. I was marrying into all of this, the Harrison name, their world. And as much as I wanted to, I didn't know if I could ever truly fit in. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong? Like you were playing a part in someone else's story, just waiting for the moment they figured out you weren't supposed to be there? Let me know in the comments. But as much as I tried to ignore the tension between us, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And that night, as I lay there wide awake, I knew the storm was coming. The calm before it, the quiet before the truth would finally break through. Things started to change, slowly at first, but enough for me to notice. Max's late nights at the office turned into entire weekends spent working. His phone, always within reach, was no longer just an accessory. It became his lifeline, buzzing constantly with messages he'd quickly swipe away if I came near. When I asked about it, he'd brush me off with the same excuse. Just work, Autumn. It's nothing. But the excuses grew thinner, and my heart grew heavier. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But the more he pulled away, the more my suspicions began to gnaw at me. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. Pregnancy hormones making me see things that weren't there. But then, it was the little things. The way he seemed to avoid me when I tried to share the excitement of the baby's first ultrasound, the sudden distance. The way he seemed irritated when I asked him to pick a baby name. It was like I was speaking to a stranger, not the man I married. I started second-guessing myself, wondering if I was just imagining things. Maybe I was overthinking it. After all, this was Max, the guy who swore we were a team, the one who made me feel special when I didn't think anyone could. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And then, one afternoon, it all hit me. I was sitting in the waiting room at the doctor's office, scrolling through my phone while my mom flipped through a magazine beside me. I didn't expect to run into anyone I knew, but then Rachel walked in. Rachel Green, my old friend from high school. We hadn't spoken in years, not since she left for college, and I stayed behind. She saw me immediately and came over, her freckled face breaking into a wide smile. We exchanged pleasantries, caught up on life, and then Just as I was starting to feel like maybe things weren't so bad, she casually mentioned someone I hadn't thought about in ages. "Hey, did you hear? Lillian Carter's back in town. You remember her, right? She used to date Max back in college." I froze. Lillian. I had heard her name once or twice before, always in passing, always so distant that it didn't feel real. But now, hearing Rachel say it like it was just another piece of gossip, I felt that familiar chill spread through me. "Yeah, I know her," I managed to say, my voice steady despite the tightness in my chest. "What about her?" "Oh, she's pregnant," Rachel said, glancing down at my belly. "Due in November, I think. Funny, huh? I mean, small world. Running into both of you like this. It felt like the ground had shifted beneath me." Rachel didn't know about the cracks in my own life, about the strange distance between Max and me. But hearing her say that Lillian was pregnant, my mind immediately began piecing things together. The timing. The way Max had acted after his trip to Chicago. Could Max be involved with her? Was this the reason he'd been so distant, so secretive? I tried to shake the thought, but the more I thought about it, the more everything seemed to make sense. I couldn't just ignore it anymore. I needed answers. So, I started making plans. Quietly, carefully, with no one knowing. I'd find out the truth, one way or another. I wasn't going to just sit back and let my life spiral out of control. I was going to take action, even if it meant facing something I wasn't ready to know. The seeds of doubt had been planted, and I was going to get the answers I needed. The truth was out there, and I wasn't going to stop until I found it. Couldn't ignore it anymore. The doubt, the questions, they were eating at me from the inside, and I had to know. So I made a decision. It wasn't a decision I ever thought I'd have to make, but at that point, I didn't care. I had to find out the truth. I wasn't going to let my suspicions linger any longer, like a dark cloud hanging over my head. I reached out to Jen, an old friend who had been there for me through everything, even when I hadn't deserved it. I didn't have to explain much. She could see the anxiety in my eyes, the strain on my face. "What do you need?" she asked, already knowing what I was going to say. "I need a sample," I said quietly. "Something from a man who's not Max." Jen didn't hesitate. She grabbed a strand of hair from her boyfriend's sweatshirt without a word. No questions, no judgment, just silent support, like she always had. A few days later, I found a discreet lab, the kind that specialized in private paternity tests. I paid in cash, using the little savings I had tucked away. The technician was professional but distant, and I could tell they'd seen this before. "We'll run the test twice," he said. "Once with your husband's sample and once with the unrelated male's hair as a control. Results in 3 to 5 business days." I nodded, my stomach twisting. I wasn't nervous, not yet. But that calm feeling would come crashing down soon enough. The reality of what I was doing, what I was about to uncover, made my heart ache. I spent the next few days in a daze. My world felt like it was spiraling out of control, yet I was still moving through the motions, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was preparing for the worst, hoping, praying that I was wrong, that it was just my imagination running wild. The results came in exactly 4 days later. I sat at my desk, folding baby clothes for the nursery when the email came through. I didn't want to open it, but I couldn't help myself. With trembling fingers, I clicked on the attachment, my heart hammering in my chest. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was reading. Max's sample showed a 0% probability of paternity. Not even a chance. I read it again, hoping the words would rearrange themselves. But they didn't. The truth was there, staring me in the face. For a moment I felt numb. The kind of numb that comes when you realize that everything you thought was real is a lie. It wasn't just about Max's betrayal. It was about everything. the life we'd built, the family we were supposed to have. Everything had been built on a lie. The anger, the hurt, it came in waves, but I had to keep myself together. For my baby. I printed out the results and locked them away in my desk drawer. I didn't want to face it, but I knew I would. I had to. I didn't tell Max. Not yet. I didn't want to confront him when my emotions were still raw. Instead, I made a plan. I would wait for the right moment. The perfect moment to let the truth unfold. Jen knew, of course. She could see it in my eyes, the quiet resolve. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "I'll be fine." I wasn't sure if I believed it yet, but I would be fine. I had to be. 3 days later, it was time. The baby shower. Max's mother had planned the whole thing, another spectacle, another way to show off their perfect little family. It was supposed to be about celebration, about joy. But for me, it was something else entirely. A stage for the truth to come crashing through. Max didn't know it, but the moment we walked through those doors, everything was about to change. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not this time. The day of the baby shower arrived, with all the fanfare of a well-orchestrated performance. The kind of event that Max's family thrived on. Carefully curated, perfectly planned, and designed to showcase their wealth and status. I knew it was important to Claire, my mother-in-law, who saw every gathering as a chance to reinforce their social standing. But for me, it was just another reminder that I didn't belong. We arrived at the country club, the East Garden reserved, just for this occasion, its marble fountains gleaming in the sunlight, the perfectly manicured lawn stretching out in every direction. The space was elegant, almost unreal in its beauty, and it felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. I felt small. Claire was already there, of course, overseeing everything with a tight smile on her face. Her silver blonde hair was swept up in an immaculate updo, her pearls catching the light as she directed staff members with practiced authority. "Autumn, darling," she called to me, air kissing my cheek with that same thin smile. "You look comfortable." She let her eyes linger on my maternity dress, as if silently measuring whether it met her standards. I just smiled and nodded, trying to let it roll off me. But I felt the weight of her disapproval, even in the small gestures. The whole day felt like a performance. Every question, every glance, every word calculated. "We're expecting a girl, yes," I said for the 100th time, my voice polite but strained. "August 17th. Olivia, we think, after Max's grandmother." I caught my reflection in a glass door, and for a moment I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked happy, but there was something else, something hidden beneath the surface. Maybe it was the truth that was gnawing at me, the truth I was holding so tightly in my purse. The lab results. The proof that Max wasn't the father of my baby. As the guests began to arrive, Max's colleagues, Claire's friends from the garden club, neighbors from their gated community, I felt like a prop in someone else's play. They circled me, with practiced enthusiasm, asking the same questions I'd answered a dozen times already. I could hear the murmurs as people eyed the baby bump, already speculating on every detail of my pregnancy, as if I were a character in their latest social story. My mother arrived shortly after, her discomfort obvious in the way she shifted on her feet, clutching a modestly wrapped present. She looked out of place in the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits, but she was here, and that meant more to me than I could say. She came over and whispered, "You okay, sweetie? You seem a million miles away." Before I could answer, the door to the garden opened, and all conversation in the room seemed to stop. There she was. Lillian Carter, Max's ex. I froze. She stood in the entrance, her hand resting protectively over a baby bump, dressed in a fitted green dress that clung to her curves, like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. Her blonde hair cascaded perfectly around her face. The same face I'd seen in old photographs Max had carelessly left around the house. The same woman who, just a moment ago, had been nothing but a name in my mind. She looked around, uncertain, until her eyes landed on Claire. Claire, of course, immediately, beamed, her smile widening as she rushed to Lillian's side, guiding her through the crowd with a proprietary hand on her elbow. "Autumn, dear," Claire's voice rang out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I don't believe you've met Lillian, Max's college sweetheart. She's recently moved back to town and is expecting herself. Such a happy coincidence, isn't it?" I could feel Max stiffen beside me, his champagne flute frozen halfway to his lips. I turned to him, meeting his eyes for the first time that day. His face had drained of color, and I knew in that moment that he wasn't just shocked. He was terrified. Max opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. What is she doing here?" he stammered, his voice tight with panic. I looked at him, my gaze steady, the lab results tucked safely in my purse. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Claire stood beside Lillian, beaming like she had just made the perfect entrance, while Max seemed to shrink into himself, sweating and fumbling. The tension in the room was thick. Everyone was waiting for a reaction, watching the drama unfold. I felt the weight of the moment. My heart pounded, but I kept my face calm, my posture straight. Inside, my mind was racing. Claire knew. She had to know. This wasn't just a coincidence. This wasn't just about Max's infidelity. This was about Claire ensuring that the Harrison bloodline stayed intact. She had orchestrated this. I realized then that Claire had been playing a game I hadn't even known I was a part of. She'd brought Lillian back to town, pregnant, and ready to step into the role of the perfect Harrison matriarch. All while I was left in the dark, trying to piece together a life with a man who had betrayed me in ways I couldn't yet understand. I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. It was time to end the act. With deliberate calm, I reached into my purse and pulled out the folded DNA results. The room was still buzzing with whispers, but everything felt muffled as I sent the results to the group chat that Claire had set up for the baby shower. I didn't add anything else, just the lab results. The truth. The ping of notifications filled the air, a soft chorus of chaos. I looked up from my phone and met Claire's gaze. Her eyes flashed with something I couldn't name. Panic, guilt, maybe both. But she quickly masked it with a smile that no longer seemed so certain. Max stood frozen beside me, sweat now trickling down his face. The truth was out. And now, I was ready to face whatever storm I had just unleashed. The moment the message sent, everything changed. At first, there was just silence. A heavy, almost suffocating quiet that blanketed the room. No one moved. No one spoke. And then, slowly, the buzz started. Phones chimed. Pings echoed across the space like a wave crashing on the shore. And the once celebratory atmosphere began to shift, folding in on itself. The guests, who had been so eager to fawn over my baby bump just minutes earlier, now stared at their screens in stunned silence, reading the results, processing the words. I could feel their eyes on me, some filled with sympathy, others with morbid curiosity, and still others with disbelief. Max's face went pale as he looked at his phone, his hands shaking as he tried to make sense of the truth that was unraveling around him. His perfect little world, the one he had so carefully constructed for himself, was crumbling before his eyes. The facade of control, of being the golden child in the Harrison family, was shattered. And as his shoulders slumped into defeat, I could see the weight of everything he had built slowly crushing him from the inside. Claire's response was different, cold, calculated. She tried to regain control, her smile faltering only for a brief moment before she straightened up, her chin lifted just slightly higher. But it was all so transparent now. The carefully curated world she had tried so hard to maintain was slipping through her fingers, and I could see it in the way her mask cracked. For the first time, I saw the fear behind her eyes. Fear of being exposed. There was a part of me that wanted to scream, to let all the hurt and betrayal out in a single, loud cry. But that wasn't what I needed. I didn't need to take revenge. I didn't need to tear him apart or destroy his life the way he'd done to mine. What I needed was justice. Truth had to win. And in that moment, it felt like the universe was finally balancing things out. I could feel the weight of my decision, the gravity of everything that was unfolding. And yet, as I stood there, facing Max and his crumbling world, I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't crushed beneath the weight of what had happened. I had a sense of relief, knowing that the truth was out, that I could finally stop pretending, stop lying to myself about what had been going on behind my back. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was mine. That's when I heard Margaret's voice cut through the murmur of confusion. Claire's sister. I hadn't expected her to speak up, not in the middle of all this chaos. But there she was, standing at the edge of the crowd, her voice firm as she addressed Claire directly. "You know, Claire," Margaret began, her tone cool, but full of quiet force. "This obsession with bloodlines and perfection, it's never been just about the family. It's about control. You've been trying to force everything into your neat little box for so long, and look where it's gotten you." Claire's jaw clenched, her face hardening, but Margaret didn't stop. "You've manipulated and measured people like they were just things to be moved around. Max, Lillian, Autumn, all of them part of your game. And look at what it's done. The damage you've caused, it's irreversible." The room fell into a stunned silence once more. I could feel the tension building in the air, and for the first time, Claire was the one being exposed. The facade she'd built so carefully, over the years, her role as the perfect matriarch, the strong and unshakable Harrison matron, was crumbling. Max shifted uncomfortably beside me, the weight of everything he had tried to keep hidden finally too much for him. He looked at me, his expression torn between guilt and helplessness. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was finished. There was nothing left for him to say. In that moment, I watched him take a slow, measured step back, his head bowed, in defeat. With a single glance, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving the life he had so carefully built behind him. His exit was quiet. No dramatic confrontation, no final words. Just the sound of a door closing behind him, leaving the chaos in his wake. And there, in the aftermath, Claire's world began to fall apart. It wasn't a sudden crash, but a slow, painful unraveling, as everything she had fought to control slipped through her fingers. The people who had once admired her, respected her, began to pull away, whispers swirling around the room as they saw her for what she truly was. For a moment, it felt like time stood still. No one moved. The air was thick with the weight of what had just happened. Max was gone. Claire was exposed, and I, Autumn Miller, was standing in the middle of it all, no longer playing the role I had been assigned. I was just me. And that felt like the most powerful thing I had ever been. Max's departure was quieter than I ever could have imagined. No final confrontation, no dramatic speeches, just him packing up his things and walking out the door. It was as if the life we'd built together had never existed, slipping away without a trace. I watched him go, but I didn't chase after him. I didn't need to. What was there left to fight for? Claire tried to regain control in the days that followed, of course. She reached out. Texts, calls, even a visit to my mother's apartment where she showed up looking like nothing had changed. But I wasn't the same woman she'd manipulated, the one who would just nod and go along with whatever she demanded. I stood firm, even when everything around me seemed to be falling apart. I knew that strength was the only thing I had left, and I wasn't going to let her take that from me, too. Every word she said, every attempt to bring me back into her world, was met with silence or quiet refusal. I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need anything from her. Max moved to Chicago soon after, leaving the mess behind. I heard through the grapevine that he had started over, trying to piece together a new life for himself in a city far away. But in the same breath, I also heard that Lillian lost the baby, just a few weeks after everything exploded. The news hit me harder than I expected. I didn't wish that on anyone, least of all Lillian. No one should have to go through that kind of loss, even if she had been a part of the chaos in my life. It added a layer of complexity to everything, a reminder that life isn't as simple as we sometimes want it to be. We're all just doing the best we can, trying to find our way through the mess we've been handed. For me, it was a hard path. I had no idea where to go next, no map to guide me. But I knew one thing. I was done being defined by the Harrison name, by their expectations, by the life they tried to push me into. This was my chance to rebuild, to create something that was mine. I focused on what I had left. My daughter, my mother, and the small, quiet strength that was slowly growing within me. My bond with my mother grew deeper, stronger. She had always been there, even when I didn't fully appreciate her. And now, I realized just how much she had sacrificed for me. We spent hours together, cooking, talking, laughing, things we hadn't done in years. She was my rock, and in those quiet moments, I found the courage to keep going. It wasn't long before I started planning my future. I wasn't going to let everything fall apart without building something new. I took the small amount of money I had saved, some help from my mom, and a business loan, and opened a coffee shop. It wasn't anything grand, just a little corner shop in a quiet neighborhood. But it was mine. Every decision, every step, was mine. And then, there was Matt. He came into my life when I least expected it. Matt Jenkins, the man who helped me with the lighting in the shop. He had this easy way about him, a kind smile, a gentle presence. It wasn't anything romantic yet, but I could feel the connection. Something real, something simple, with no pretenses. He didn't know me as Max's wife or the Harrison's daughter. He just knew me as Autumn. And for the first time in a long while, I felt seen for who I truly was. I didn't know what would come of that connection, or where my life was headed. But I knew one thing for sure. I was finally taking control. I wasn't going to let the past define me any longer. As I stood in the shop, looking around at the coffee beans, the chairs, the small moments of peace I had created, I couldn't help but smile. I had come so far, and for the first time, I felt proud of the woman I had become. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But I had rebuilt my life, brick by brick, step by step. And as I watched my daughter play in the corner of the shop, I knew that every challenge, every heartbreak, had led me here. I was exactly where I needed to be. If you've enjoyed this journey with Autumn, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. What's your next step in your own journey?